Good morning on this Sunday, August 17th, and welcome to the Georgia Gang. President Donald Trump weighs in on the Georgia governor's race. Also, investigators say the gunman in a shooting outside of CDC's headquarters fired more than 500 shots, killing an officer in the line of duty. And some DeKalb County parents say, don't mess with recess. Melita, Phil, Theron, and Brian are all here. The debate and discussion begin right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
It comes as no surprise. Former President Donald Trump is throwing his weight behind Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones and Georgia's race for governor. With millions in the bank and Trump's early endorsement, some are calling him a warrior. Like Donald Trump, Jones is positioning himself as the front runner. So let's run the table. Brian, I'll start with you because this endorsement surely puts Jones in a front runner position when you're talking about a Republican primary.
There's no doubt about it. And of course, I am an advisor for Chris Carr. And I've said on the show many times, any Republican candidate running for office in a primary will want President Trump's endorsement. Period. End of story. It is a net positive. The thing is, for Chris Carr and anybody else getting into this race, this was baked into the cake before they made the decision. There was an assumption that was almost as good as gold that Trump was going to be behind Burt Jones. Burt Jones' father, of course, has been a major donor for President Trump. Burt Jones was an early endorser of President Trump back in 2015. He wasn't the first, which Trump's social post said, but he was one of the early ones. So everyone kind of knew. And so we'll see in 2026 if the impact is anywhere close to what it was in 2018, where it was a huge impact for Governor Kemp's race for governor back then. We'll see if it's still the same. It didn't work in 2022. Burt Jones had the endorsement there and barely got over the 50% mark in that primary. And then the ones who ran against the incumbents lost by 50 points. So we'll see if Georgia is again an outlier. Everywhere else, Trump's endorsement is determinative.
Well, let's talk to the other Republican, Phil, on the panel. In 2022, Governor Kemp won without the endorsement of President Trump. In fact, Trump backed former Senator David Perdue in the primary. So what does Chris Carr have to do to get over a Trump endorsement in a Republican primary?
Well, that's a good question. And I think that he's going to have to move to the right on certain issues. And I think he's going to have to explain his record. What has he done as Attorney General? I think that's very important. And I think that perhaps to Brian's point, yes, I think you could call Burt Jones the front runner, although my sources tell me that Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger is making moves now and interviewing people to go in the governor's race. So that could make it a three-way primary next May. And so actually, I think that hurts Carr and Raffensperger because they may be drawing from the same primary pool, whereas the Trump base is obviously going to be for Jones, and he's reaching out to centrists who are voting. And there's also a Democratic primary for governor, so a lot of Democrats won't be voting for Brad Raffensperger.
So, Theron, I know we talked extensively last week about the Democrats, but I assume they're all kind of hunkered down and raising money.
Yeah, everybody's on the phones. I'm getting the calls, and not just this week gubernatorial candidates are raising money. We got other folks that are jumping in the race. But Laura, you may remember I talked about the big three a few weeks ago. We were waiting on to see what Michael Thurman was going to do. We were waiting to see if Brad Raffensperger was going to get in, and then also it was Burt Jones. And I added a fourth, which was Marjorie Taylor Greene. So MTG's out, Burt Jones is in, MT is in, Michael Thurman, and now, to Phil's point, does Raffensperger get in? But the thing back to the Burt Jones sort of strategy, it's been really timing. Think about this. He launched his campaign, immediately $10 million went into an account. The Carr campaign has already filed a lawsuit to talk about whether that was abusive. Was that right? Is it the right thing to do? They're challenging the legality of it. And then also now, he could have waited to get the Trump endorsement. But to bring it out in actual August, when the election is not until next year, we think May hasn't been set yet, shows that Burt Jones wants to show momentum and try to keep it. I agree with Phil and I agree with B-Rob. Now Carr has got to be able to really talk about what he's done. How does he appeal to some people who are not easily influenced by Trump's endorsement? And will he be able to raise money now? Because when that Air Force One lands in Atlanta, whether it's at PDK or Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, Trump brings money, he brings enthusiasm. And I think if Raffensperger gets in, I agree with Phil. I think that then it's going to be how do you dice up the votes and what's the pathway for everyone running?
Melita, weigh in here.
Well, it's interesting that the Wall Street Journal had a an article about Raffensperger this week saying that he was no longer the Walking Dead, which I thought was interesting.
They stole that from me. That was from a column I wrote 2 years ago. Dead Brad Walking is what the column was. That was my line.
Well,
No, I'm just.
You should copyright some of your isms.
Yes, I'm proud of it. I thank you, Wall Street Journal, for quoting me. Yes.
Let me lead it on.
Well, Bill Torfey said, quote, Jones doesn't come across as a deep thinker, but when has that hurt a politician in Georgia? I thought that was a pretty good line as well. The key here is how well will Trump's endorsement wear after a few more months as the inventory for businesses, we're now into the tariff priced inventory hitting shelves. Steaks have gone up in price by a lot, and MAGA folks are red meat eaters. So there's a lot about Trump's endorsement that might not wear so well in a few months. And so I think we've still got a lot to see.
All right, well, let's jump into the Senate race, because in the race for U.S. Senate, Derek Dooley is out on the campaign trail. He spoke with our own Martha Zoller. He talked about why he missed voting in several elections and said he was really busy coaching football, focused on his players and their families. Phil, how best to answer that one? And I know you watched the interview.
I did see the interview. It took him 10 days, but he finally did an interview, which is good. I hope he does more. But that was the main takeaway for me, that 20 years he's busy with his family. Well, you could argue all of us are busy with work and family. It's just stunning. I'm glad he's voting now, but I think it's a kind of a poor role model for our children and grandchildren. I have always taught my kids to, that's your citizen's duty to vote. But anyhow, he's starting to talk a little bit about policy, but in the interview with Martha Zoller, I didn't hear that much policy issue, and I think if I was advising him, more policy issues. Let's see what you're saying.
Melita, I mean, I was surprised to hear 20 years of not voting.
Like people sometimes say, I don't think I would have told that. You know, I mean, we only knew that he had missed 2 presidential elections. Just to come right out and say I didn't vote in 20 years worth of presidential elections, that is a big, big no-no. If you profess to be interested in politics now and you didn't even bother to vote in presidential elections, that's going to be a great thing to use in ads. The other thing is that, you know, it's one thing to talk the platitudes like, we'll roll up our sleeves, we'll have moral courage, but you need to show how platitudes turn into policy. And I'll agree with Phil. Derek Dooley is not talking policy. And he needs to say what he will do.
Brian.
And for example, he didn't really take some of her softball questions about issues. He just danced all around.
Brian, let me ask you, because you've advised plenty of candidates. It's early. It's really early, so he's got a long road ahead. But also, you know, this is the U.S. Senate that he's running for. This is not a state senator. This is not a state rep. This is not a county commission. He needs to be up on these issues already.
Yeah, I think Derek Dooley probably was speaking a lot of football metaphors, so I'll use one. I'm not going to engage in the gang tackle here. I'm going to have a little bit of grace about a new candidate getting into the race, and I'm going to hear what he has to say. I hear y'all on policy. We all want to know. He's still in the get to know you phase, and he's still telling us who he is. He's telling us where he came from. That's what his rollout video was about. I got cringed a little bit for him and for his team when it got to the question about his voting. An old friend of mine, John Watson, a former chairman of the state GOP, said, sometimes, Brian, you have something we call bad facts. And this is a bad fact. And it is a rock that they can't get around. He had to go and have an answer. He chose to go with, I was changed by COVID. Yeah, believe it or not. The good news for him is the timing, Lori. You want stuff like this out in the first few weeks, 9 months away from the primary. By December, January, if anybody brings that up, and they won't because it'll be old news by then, he could be like, hey, we covered this a long time ago. We're moving on. So this is when you want to get all of this kind of stuff out.
All right, the winner of the Republican primary, of course, will face Democratic Senator John Ossoff. Senator Ossoff is defending one of his most controversial decisions, his vote to block certain U.S. weapons sales to Israel. Speaking to the Atlanta Rotary, Ossoff said standing up for U.S. values and humanitarian concerns must apply to allies as well. Now, it's a stance that has drawn criticism from pro-Israel groups, but is now gaining traction among Senate Democrats and some of the American public.
Well, shout out to Kathy Waller and Rod Edmond, who was pictured there in your clip. I'm an Atlanta Rotarian, and I was very happy to see Senator Ossoff come and address the group. Not only did he just speak, Lori, he gave an update. He shortened it a little bit because he dove into the Q&A session. But to get to this topic particularly, to paraphrase what the senator is saying, and let's forget, he's voted with the Jewish community in Israel 96-97% of the time. His people have drilled that into me every time I talk to them. He said, look, he's a pro-Israel senator, and he's Jewish himself. And what he sort of did this time was say, look, Israel has a right to defend itself from because they got attacked, but you cannot ignore what's happening. Innocent women, innocent kids are being killed. And so that was sort of a move that the senator has said publicly, but to say it now was the right thing to do. And I think that he understands that this war in Gaza has gone on for too long. Innocent lives are being lost. Yes, Israel has an opportunity and should defend themselves, but we've got to do everything we can to work with everyone who's willing to work with us to put an end to this war.
Phil, final word.
Well, Ossoff glosses over the fact all too many times that Hamas started the war, and the fact that they hate us and want to destroy American Israel as a problem. And I also think, too, that Ossoff made a serious mistake, and a lot of Democrats tell me this, too, when he shouted out to a left-wing crowd a couple months ago that when I'm going to get in again, I'm going to impeach Trump. That's not the way to campaign. Let's do some policy issues here from Ossoff and just not be anti-Trump. It's irresponsible. It's a waste of time if he wants to try to impeach Trump. It's not going to happen. His popularity is on the increase. Inflation's down, by the way. And so I think Ossoff still has a struggle to get the center vote over to him.
All right, folks, I got to leave it there. Coming up, new details are coming out about the shooting outside the CDC. We'll discuss next.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
New details are emerging about the shooting outside the CDC headquarters. The GBI says the gunman fired more than 500 rounds, striking multiple CDC buildings and left behind writings questioning COVID vaccines. Officials now confirm the shooter took his own life, and responding DeKalb police officer David Rose was tragically killed in the line of duty. Theron.
My heartfelt condolences go out to David Rose and his family. When you look at this story and the people who talk about Officer Rose, and there was a clip that was played when he was a graduate of the academy, proud DeKalb County officer, served in the Marines, wanted to come back and actually do his job. And I'm getting a little emotional about this because I'm angry. But time and time again, Lori, and we've been doing this show a long time. Phil's been doing it longer than any of us, right? But since you've been our host, we come on this show all the time, and what is the sort of reoccurring theme? You have parents not being responsible, had guns in a safe that were not locked up, a kid who is outraged, who's got mental illness, whatever, but I think it's hate, gets access to the guns, goes and fires 500 rounds at the Center for Disease Control, and this brave officer, this man, goes in and puts his life on line. 2 children, pregnant wife, right now, who literally does not have a father because a young man who was full of hate and outrage about vaccines and the CDC. And I also sympathize with these CDC workers. They're terrified. I've talked to a couple of them, and I encourage everyone to do 2 things. One, if you know someone works at the CDC, tell them to continue to put pressure on elected officials, from the president to local government on down, because those folks deserve to go to work and be safe. And then lastly, go to the GoFundMe page for David Rose. I contributed $500 this week. It's raised an amount of money, but no penny is going to bring him back. But I really want to make sure that people take this very seriously. Let's not just gloss over it with some appearances, saying we offer condolences. This is a real problem that we have in our country, and parents need to be held accountable. If you're going to be a gun owner, be a responsible gun owner, and don't let your kids, who, by the way, you call 911 reporting that he has problems. that you know that he's going through some stuff. And you still don't take the extra precautions to make sure that the guns are locked up. So I'm outraged with this, but my hearts and prayers go out to his family. But I'm going to keep speaking up on this issue and calling people out because it's happening too often in our country.
I mean, I'm not blaming the parents or anything, but if you know that your son has any type of issues, or your daughter, or anybody, get the guns out of the house at least. You know, give them to neighbors or family members. At least don't have them in the house. Yeah.
Well, and we knew this kid was suicidal.
Yes,
And there were numerous instances that involved law enforcement. We knew that there were mental health issues here, and his neighbors knew that he was pretty radicalized on vaccines. Now, granted, if some of my neighbors probably are too, and I would never assume they're going to go shoot up the CDC. But I do want to second what Theron was saying about Officer Rose. I watched that video of his graduation at the academy, and if you aren't moved by him in that video saying, "I want to be the guy who runs toward danger when everyone runs away," and knowing what happened within the next year, if you're not moved by that, please self-deport from this country, because it was just so powerful. And I agree, please go to that GoFundMe. I hope a lot of people participated in the Atlanta's Finest 5K this weekend that will benefit Officer Rose. What a great American.
I think we can all echo some of these points that are being made.
Great. I think we also need to call out the misinformation that is trafficked about COVID vaccines, and the fact that the administration showed no empathy or sympathy with all of the CDC employees. And we really were lucky that no one inside those 4 buildings that received the bullets was injured.
Well, if you want to make this political, I would say this. The CDC had a problem in the media during COVID because of all the conflicting statements under the Biden administration. So let's not be so harsh on the Trump administration and forget what happened.
I want Trump to say something. Has he said something?
Oh, of course.
No.
Yeah. I saw a statement.
I mean, it deserves a visit. I mean, the Health and Human Services Secretary came down.
And RFK, the HH Secretary, said something.
But what is Trump doing? What is he saying?
Well, he's meeting with Putin in Alaska. I think that's a pretty good reason to not be here, right? I mean, this is an international issue that he's involved in this week.
Okay, I got to move on because I really want to get to the lieutenant governor's race. It got a lot more crowded this week as Republican Senator Blake Tillery and GOP State Rep David Clark announced they're running alongside Steve Gooch and John Kennedy. Democrat Josh McLaurin is also running. Phil, on the Republican side, it's getting really crowded. Any front runners yet?
No. In fact, as a constitutional conservative, I'm so happy because all of these people are constitutional conservatives, and the problem they have, it's a good problem. You have to define yourselves. Who's going to be the best one? I may have to flip a coin. They're all so good, and vote for one of them. But I think it's going to have to be a definition. For example, Blake Tillery, state senator, has said he's for a bill to stop debanking. Every one of us ought to be in favor of that, because you don't want a cancel culture. If somebody doesn't like your politics or your opinions, you don't want a bank to say no. And I think that's a bipartisan issue. So he did a good thing defining an issue, and I want to hear what the others have to say. But that's going to be a mess.
It's going to be quite a race to watch. Melita, any more Democrats you hear of possibly jumping in?
There are rumors, but yet to be confirmed.
Okay. All right, we'll leave it there, folks. Coming up, recess rebellion in DeKalb County, why some parents say cutting kids' playtime to just 15 minutes is hurting more than it's helping. We'll discuss.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
Some DeKalb County parents are pushing back after learning their children's recess time was slashed to just 15 minutes. At Monday's night school board meeting, they demanded a return to at least 30 minutes of daily playtime. But district officials say the schedule shift was necessary to expand instruction time. Melita?
Well, as a grandmother of many, I think we all know that children need to get the wiggles out, and recess lets them do that. And so it may be that having the recess time helps later in the classroom for children's concentration levels.
I agree. As a mom of a child with ADHD, I mean, recess is paramount.
Well, when my daughter, who also probably has some focus issues, gets home from school, it's not what happened in reading group or in math that she talks about. It's what happened on the playground. That's who she played with. That is the big part of her day. And of course, I am a big believer in the mental as well as physical health effects that this has. But on the other side, where I am sympathetic to the DeKalb School Board, a phrase never said by me on this panel ever before is, right, is it is for literacy training.
Yeah.
And we know how critical that is to children's future. If they're not reading by third grade, at third grade level, they get left behind statistically and they don't catch up. And it is tragic. It has tragic life outcomes, particularly when so many kids lost out on that development during COVID because of really stupid school board decisions that kept schools closed for way too long, with deleterious effect on our children that will last forever. So I understand reading is hugely important. I do not envy the school board members' conundrum.
All right. Well, after years of anticipation, Atlanta Beltline officials have unveiled a bold $3.5 billion plan to bring light rail to nearly the entire 22-mile loop. Now, the long-awaited blueprint includes a detailed route through the challenging northwest segment, a key milestone in the Beltline's mission to connect neighborhoods with reliable transit. But not everyone is on board, with some residents raising concerns over shifting priorities and all these delays in key areas like the East Side Trail. Theron.
Well, it's a draft report. I think with the
another draft.
Well, no, but it's gonna probably be closer to $4 billion when you include the infill stations, and so I think that the plan is good. Of course, it's going to be met with a lot of criticism because folks want heavy rail. But the fact that the Atlanta Beltline is doing what they said they would do, they will come out with a study. There will be another one. This was a 2.5 year sort of thing that's been studied. But also, it's making sure that transit-determined neighborhoods, people who actually need transit, are actually going to be put on the forefront. And so, while yes, some folks may want to have a big old train go down the middle of the Beltline, I want to commend Clyde Higgs and others for basically keeping their word. And I think that you'll see that this will be a final report that will be inclusive of the community's input. And ultimately, we do need to expand transit on the Beltline. We just got to do it in the right way and focus on those communities who need it the most.
Phil, is this a good compromise for those folks who wanted the heavy rail? At least there is some transit component in all of this.
Yeah, heavy rail is far too expensive. I don't think that was ever a big factor. But that is a heavy price tag. And I think that, I'm going to wait to see what the final report is.
Brian?
I'd like to point out that when we first envisioned the Beltline, it was about this economic development boom that could happen around this loop in many parts of the city that were in very bad shape, really run down parts of town. And what's fascinating, and this is a great tribute to the Atlanta Beltline, is we've seen that boom even without transit. So let's factor that into, what was written in 1998, 1999 isn't, sent down from God. We can still, reform that vision. It is working, and maybe there's a way that has to do with autonomous vehicles, something that's on rubber tires, something that's not going to be $4 billion. I believe in transit. I think that high density is a place to have it. There's a lot of good here. I trust Andre Dickinson's vision for this, but at the end of the day, $4 billion is just really the starting point. None of these projects ever cost the amount they tell us it's going to cost.
Yes.
And I
live
thought
and learn.
It's more
Melita.
expensive. I mean, that comes out to $125 million per mile for light rail. So I think getting the community input and looking at how technology for transportation has changed since the original vision was outlined will be important steps for coming to a final plan.
All right, we'll wrap it there. All right. Winners and losers next. Stay tuned.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
All right, real quickly, my client, Rivian, is set to host 2 events in mid-September to mark the long-anticipated start of construction on its $5 billion EV factory east of Atlanta. The celebrations include a big community event and a September 16th groundbreaking, including Governor Brian Kemp. So that's exciting news for a lot of folks out there.
Absolutely.
Lots of jobs coming. Brian.
My winner is the Atlanta Track Club, and I'm doing that partly because they made them my loser a few weeks ago in a humorous attempt about me not getting my bib for the Peachtree Road Race. But this weekend they did a fundraiser for Officer David Rose of DeKalb County, who lost his life in that CDC attack. Thank you so much for doing that. Thank you for bringing this to the forefront, and thank you to all of my fellow DeKalb County residents who have gone to the memorial, who have donated to that GoFundMe campaign. This is a beautiful example of a community coming together around tragedy and doing the right thing.
Theron.
David Rose is definitely my winner. And Melita reminded me also, shout out to the person who called 911 as well. You maybe can give that name when we get there to you. Also, I want to make the Tour Championship a winner this week. This tour, best 30 golf players in the world come to Atlanta. But 2 DeKalb County students, Aiko Benford Samuel West will tee off at the Tour Championship. Also want to give a shout out to APD officer Ron Reed. He enjoys the show. Saw him at the airport. And then lastly, Rodney Bullard, the Beloved event. Oh my God, great job by the St. House. Wonderful event, doing a lot for the community.
Phil.
Winner is the Shepherd Center, 50th anniversary. It's world renowned, not just Georgia renowned, with all of their brain and spinal surgeries, and they work with MS. So Atlanta Shepherd, the co-founder, she's still going strong. Winners. My own post, American Legion Post 29 in Marietta is a winner. They're doing a lot for veterans. They got a 5K race coming up, and a friend of the post, a member of the post, Pete Bagley, passed away, and condolences to his family.
Okay, no losers this week, huh?
No losers.
All right, Melita.
Well, my winner is Trouble in God's Country blogger Charlie Hazlett for a well-written column this week of data about which 94 Georgia counties are losing more people than gaining with the birth rate. It's well written and you should read it. My loser for this week is the process MARTA's leadership used for selecting their interim CEO. They had promised that those meetings would be well publicized. Instead, they did this process in secret, and then the new CEO just declined to speak to the press, and this is not the way to restore faith in an agency.
Okay, anyone else? We've got.
Yeah, that was illegal. I mean, let's follow the open records law. I was surprised at that.
Congratulations to Jonathan Hunt. He's going to do a good job. I think that was the right decision.
All right, we'll leave it there, folks. We'll see you again next week. Make it a great one. Bye-bye.